Certainly, there are people who have been married 10 years, 20 years, longer, who are going through a divorce and have sat in my office and do not know what their spouse earns, do not know where the money is, sometimes don't know even where that their spouse banks or where the different types of accounts or investments are held. And so simply getting on the same page in terms of disclosing all of your assets, putting everything out there on paper at the beginning of a relationship can certainly be helpful. That is naturally going to spawn conversations about how did you get there? Why do you have your money, kind of set up this way? So what I'll usually do is ask people, where are they starting from? Right. So some couples are more naturally inclined to do, maybe what their parents or grandparents likely did, which is have one bank account and everything goes in and out of that one bank account. But that can create tension around, arguments about the spending from that bank account, or are you spending too much, or, do I not have the same access that you do? And so those couples are probably more likely to feel comfortable with the inside out. The money still goes into that one joint bank account, but then it flows out from there. And then couples who their natural tendency is to keep everything separate are probably more comfortable with outside in. Money goes into the separate bank accounts, and then you contribute to the joint account. Of course, I think that prenups should be looked at as partnership agreements for your marriage. If you are going into a business partnership with another individual, certainly you are going to try to put some ground rules down on paper, talk about how you're going to run the business, what are each of your rights and responsibilities with respect to the business. And of course, any partnership agreement worth the paper it's written on is going to spell out what happens if a partner leaves the business, right? If somebody walks away or if you need to buy out a partner. But that's not the goal of the business partnership agreement. The goal is to make the business successful, right? And it just so happens that one of the things that kind of takes confusion or worry off the table is talking about, what is the transition plan if the business comes to an end or if the partnership comes to an end. I think that we should take the same approach. We should look at prenups the same way. It's a partnership agreement for your marriage. There should be plenty in there that makes it easier to manage the finances during the marriage itself, that removes confusion about where each spouse stands with respect to the different accounts or the different assets and debts that the couple has. And the same way that you're not planning for failure in a business partnership by including kind of the termination clauses in it, it should be looked at the same way with a prenup. You are just covering your bases, and the same thing we would do with kind of any other venture. You are hoping for the best, but of course you're going to plan against your worst case scenarios too.
That's a wonderful explanation. And I tell people to just think about the prenup as a contract, right? It's just a type of a contract that two people are entering into. And while marriage is not necessarily a business deal, I like to say the divorce certainly is a business transaction.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether we like it or not, marriage itself is very similar to a financial contract. There are rights and obligations written into the law about your finances and how it interplays with your marriage. And so, the thing that I like to say is whether or not you have a written prenup, you've got a prenup. If you get married, you have a prenup. It is just your prenup happens to be the laws of the state where you are living at the time, rather than something that you and your partner have chosen yourself, that you have intentionally sat down and chosen. These are going to be the rules for our relationship. So I look at it as you are either accepting the default prenup or you are customizing your own. But a prenup is really unlimited in terms of how it can, distribute finances in a relationship. And, most of the prenups that I draft in my practice are simply saying everything that we accumulate together, we're going to split 50-50, no questions asked. Everything that the income that comes from the marriage, we're going to put in 50-50, and whatever we had coming in or inheritance or family money, that stays separate, that stays outside of our relationship. But prenups are very often used to secure the rights of the lower earning spouse in the assets that the couple accumulates together. So certainly they can be used to protect a lower earning spouse.
And we are talking Love 2.0 today. So, second marriages, the finance can get even more complicated, right? We've got children and stepchildren and child support issues and spousal support issues. There's a lot going on with second marriages.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like you said, one, you've got people who, are potentially have gone through a divorce. Maybe someone has been burned the first time. Maybe someone feels like they didn't get a fair shake the first time financially. And so, just even wading through all of that to get to the point where someone feels, comfortable enough, vulnerable enough to want to merge, their finances, merge their lives, financially and otherwise with another person can be difficult. So, from a psychological aspect, certainly there are complexities, but there is also the fact that if you have children, a portion of your resources are going to be dedicated to raising those children. And that's whether you are a person who is paying child support or whether you are receiving child support. And so a lot of people will want to set up kind of a separate bank account. It's not just mine, yours, and ours, but you may have a mine and a mine, B that is for your children's expenses or that will hold child support. The same thing may go for alimony. You're going to have a section of your income that may be going out to pay alimony or an account that is set up to receive alimony that you may not want to mix with the income that is part of your marital income in this new relationship. You may be moving into someone's home where they've already got some equity, or someone may be moving into your home where you've already been paying the mortgage for a certain period of time. And so figuring out what that looks like. Are they going to pay you rent? Are they going to get a stake in that house, some equity in the house when they move in, or is it going to stay 100% yours? And these are all things that I think are best addressed in a prenup or postnup, with an experienced attorney who knows kind of how to navigate these waters of going into a separate relationship. Where should the lines be drawn financially in this new relationship?
Okay, one final question for you. For the listener who is out there saying, I'm not against a long term relationship, but never getting married again. If she wants to move in with her partner, they live together long term, can they protect themselves like a prenup would protect them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you are going to be living with somebody, you're going to still run into a lot of the same, kind of like financial questions that married couples do. Particularly when it comes to you're both paying on potentially the same mortgage or the same rent, you're accumulating furniture, and other items together. And for those couples, it's advisable to think about getting a cohabitation agreement, which is kind of like a prenup for a couple that is not getting married, or sometimes people say prenup without the nup, right? Without the nuptial. And you can put in that kind of agreement what would happen if you were no longer living together, or if it came time to sell a piece of property, or if one spouse owned the house prior to the other spouse moving in. How are you going to divvy up equity in the event that either the relationship ends or you just move out of the house and you sell it and you move to a new place? And it doesn't just apply in the event of a divorce. And so certainly you can go further than that and talk about payment of bills, and how you're going to set up accounts. Sometimes it's still a good idea, or you may want a joint account so you have joint money paying for joint expenses. So cohabitation can sometimes, it doesn't remove all the complexities of a relationship. And so having an agreement in place for that can be a good idea as well.